Hello, I'm Robin, and welcome to Bookspin. So Halloween is almost upon us. It's a good time to read some horror, so I thought I would put together some recommendations on the theme of sci-fi horror. So I've picked 5 books within this category which I thoroughly enjoyed and I think are definitely worth your time. So let's take a look. The first book that I'd like to recommend is Parasite by Darcy Coates. This is a space horror. It's very thrilling, it's very action-packed, and it's got a very interesting structure as well. This book is set in a futuristic spacefaring civilization in which humanity has spread out throughout the stars and settled on various planets. And most of the action within this book takes place across various remote space stations on different worlds. And what happens is an alien life form has emerged, known as the Simic parasite. And this thing is very scary. It's very intelligent and adaptable. It's an amorphous creature that is able to attack and infect other organisms. And what these parasites do is they take over their victim's body and they assimilate their appearance and their personality and their memories. So they wear their host's skin. It's pretty horrific. It's the perfect disguise to spread and infect other victims. There are definite vibes from The Thing here, the John Carpenter film. And as I said, this book has got quite an interesting structure. It's not just a straight-up novel. There are actually 5 stories. We have 3 short stories followed by 2 novellas, each one with a new setting and a fresh cast of characters. But they are all linked in theme. It feels a bit like a fix-up novel. But these stories are tied together very nicely, and each one instantly grabs your attention with very tense and edge-of-the-seat action, instantly engaging characters who each face their own battle for survival against this hideous monster. So I think it was very well written, very well done, and I really enjoyed this one, so I can definitely recommend it. And my next recommendation is a classic, The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. So this is a classic, visionary and disturbing masterpiece that takes the old mad scientist trope to frightening levels of depravity. And in The Island of Dr. Moreau, our protagonist is a man who gets shipwrecked at the start of the novel and finds himself on an island inhabited with bizarre and grotesque human-animal hybrids. And these are the results of biological experiments in vivisection conducted by Dr. Moreau, who is this mad scientist. He's a disgraced scientist from London who now lives in exile on this island where he performs his experiments. And these wretched creatures, like I said, they're human-animal hybrids. They retain some residual elements of humanity to varying degrees, but some of them are quite monstrous, and some are more beast-like than others. This is classic science fiction horror, and there's a definite sense of dread that only intensifies as the story progresses. So, a classic, captivating and disturbing tale, highly recommended. And next up, we've got World War Z, a modern book. This is a very interesting novel. It combines a variety of genres. It's quite a compelling blend. You've got sci-fi horror, you've got military science fiction, and apocalyptic fiction. It's a zombie apocalypse tale, and the war in the title refers to mankind's epic struggle against the zombies, a plague of flesh-eating zombies. And the zombie pandemic starts out with a very mysterious and extremely dangerous new virus that emerges in China that has the terrifying effect of turning people into mindless, flesh-eating, violent zombies. And the authorities fail to contain this virus. It rapidly spreads and takes over the world. Vast swathes of humanity fall victim to it, and the governments can't keep it under control. And civilization all but collapses. And this novel is written from the point of view of a journalist who is interviewing survivors sometime after the zombie war is over. And these narratives, these interviews, they sort of function as self-contained short stories from all over the world. So again, it's another unique structure. It kind of reads a bit like a short story collection or a fix-up novel. And while these stories, I mean, they're all individual, they're all personal to each survivor, but they are also united in the sense that the more you read them, the wider your perspective becomes. You begin to appreciate a greater sense of the global perspective of this crisis and how the pandemic unfolds for different people in different parts of the world and how different governments deal with it. And as you'd expect, because it's a zombie story, there are moments of pure terror in this book. It's pretty morbid, it's pretty violent, but it's also pretty scary just watching the human response. It's kind of a dystopian tale. It's almost like a social critique, because it's just scary seeing how different governments fail to react in a good way to the crisis. They fail to contain the crisis, and all too often corruption and human short-sightedness always get in the way of finding a solution. So it's an enjoyable read on a number of levels. And my next recommendation is another classic, The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. This is 1950s science fiction horror at its finest. And I really love the cover illustration on this edition, which I think really shows off the horror vibes of this story. So in this book, a strange meteor shower takes place at the start of the story one night, which has the effect of making everyone blind, because anyone who looks at it becomes blind. So overnight, almost everyone is blinded. And as a result, the world goes mad. Civilization falls apart. And people turn on one another in terror and desperation as they try to survive this new world where everyone's turned blind. But that is not the worst of it. There's also a species of man-eating plants called Triffids, and they are on the move. They come in and they stalk human survivors and they kill everyone in their path. So it's a dystopian horror novel as well as straight up science fiction. So I really enjoyed this one. I think it's very atmospheric, and it's a very haunting book in some ways. And it was, I think Danny Boyle said it was a direct influence in his decision to create the screenplay for 28 Days Later. So I can definitely recommend The Day of the Triffids, and I think I want to reread it at some point because it's been a few years since I last read it. Okay, and my last recommendation for you today is Diamond Dogs by Alistair Reynolds. This is a novella, and in this book it's part of a 2-novella collection called Diamond Dogs Turquoise Days. It's a novella set within the Revelation space universe, but it's also a standalone story, so you don't have to have read any of the other books in the Revelation space series in order to enjoy this one. So Diamond Dogs is a very morbid and disturbing tale, but excellent and compelling at the same time. It's in this story we have a group of specialists who are put together in order to attempt to solve something. Basically, they discover this giant alien structure on a barren planet, and this structure is a big tower called Bloodspire. It floats above the ground. It's very mysterious. It appears to be some kind of mechanical and yet living entity of some sort created by some mysterious civilization. We don't know who. In order to proceed up the tower, the group has to face a series of mathematical and geometric puzzles, each of which must be solved in order to unlock the door and progress to the next room. And these puzzles become increasingly difficult and abstract with each room, and if you make a mistake, the consequences are extremely costly and violent and terrifying. And in some ways, what's even more disturbing is the increasingly drastic lengths that the protagonists decide to go to in order to succeed. It's a classic maze of death story. If you've ever seen the movie Cube, it's got similar vibes to that. Anyway, it's one of my favourite Alistair Reynolds stories, straight up horror, with some very outlandish and intriguing SF concepts on a theme of bodily modification and transhumanism. So I can definitely recommend it. This is not a top 5 list, but if it was, I would probably put this book or this novella at number 1. So those are my recommendations. I'd be quite interested to hear your thoughts on these and any other SF horror books that you might recommend. Let me know in the comments down below. That's it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again soon.